Hey friends, this is the Mrs. Wolfie from our half-acre homestead with a frugal living tea break. Now, right out of the gate, I had some comments come that I have to address, okay? Jill Marie wants to know, I want to start canning but have a few questions. What is the difference between a boil bath canning and pressure canning? What are the pros and cons? Is one safer than the other? I'm going to answer that. This one says, I messed up again. I made beans and ham to can, but I only put 2 inches of water in the water bath. I don't hear the lids pop as my house is very noisy with fans and air conditioner is loud, but they did seal. How would I know if it's not safe? I see you cover your jars with water. I have canned peaches, strawberries, blueberries, lima, black peas, all the same way. Just variants with time. Could they all be bad? Okay. Jill Marie. Water bath canning. You don't need any special equipment for water bath canning. Okay? You need a big, deep pot with a wire rack or a rack that will sit in the bottom, deep enough that when you put your jars in, that the boiling water comes above your jar lids. 1 to 2 inches of boiling water. That is a water bath. Pressure canning, now you will see that I use my pressure canner pot for water bath canning. It's just because it's a big pot and deep with a rack in the bottom. Pressure canning is a whole other ball of wax. Pressure canning is a specific style of pressure canning pot that has a rack in the bottom that you put your jars in. You only have 2 inches of water. You lock, the lid locks on, and there's a steam valve in the middle of the top of the lid. You vent the air out of that canner after it is locked, and then you put the weight on. You have to vent the canner of all air so that when the weight goes on, it creates the proper amount of pressure. And when it comes to boil bath canning, you do high acid fruits, vegetables, jams, jellies, pickles, and chutneys. That kind of thing. Pressure canning, you can can anything. You can can, well, not anything. Don't be canning thick pumpkin puree or anything like that. Don't can any purees, okay? But you can can, pumpkin cubes, beans, beets, meat, sauce, all of those things you can with a pressure canner, okay? The difference is one is covered in water and you need no pressure, and the other one has a bit of water but you need pressure, okay? And if you buy a pressure canner, before you start, read the instructions that come with it. Watch a lot of non-rebel canning videos and start out with the easier things first. But always do your research. Read the book that comes with the canner. Rooster Crows, you sure did mess up, honey. If you're telling me that you've been canning things in a water bath format with just this much water in the bottom of your pot and your jars sitting in it, that's not safe by any stretch of the imagination. They have to be low acid fruits and vegetables, jams and jellies, and they have to be covered in water and boiled for the recommended amount of time. If you're trying to can things like beans and ham and bean soup in a boil bath canner, Not safe at all. That's meat. That's low acid vegetables. So, rooster crows, I also recommend you start reading instructions. Okay? Boil bath canning. Put a rack in the bottom. Cover the jars completely with water by 1 to 2 inches. Pressure canning, read the instructions. Okay? I don't want to seem hard, but if you've been canning, water bath canning with only this much water in the pot, and you're doing black-eyed peas and stuff, you're gonna make some people very, very sick. So you've got to just scratch and start all over. And I'm really sorry to have to tell you that. But always, always, always research before you begin. I made some of the same mistakes. I never ever did it with meat or beans or anything like that. But the first time I boil bath canned, I couldn't understand why they wanted me. I thought it was stupid to cover the jars with water, so I only took them up to the neck. They never sealed properly. And also, so I know some people who will boil tomatoes, put them in boiling hot jars, put the lids on, turn them upside down and let them seal. I've done that. But today's tomatoes, unless you're growing them yourself, don't always have the same amount of acid as they used to. And that's no longer a safe practice. All right? But back when you could still do that with garden tomatoes, I tried it with applesauce. Oh, they all sealed. Just poured the hot applesauce into big hot jars. They all sealed, went downstairs. A month later, all the lids had popped and they were covered in mold. So please, please, please follow trusted methods of canning and do your research before you start, okay? Now let's talk about a little bit more frugal living. Today, I am getting my tomatoes cooked down for my garden medley vegetable that I'm going to be canning tomorrow. Now, I'm doing something different this time. I got 1 case and I put them in the freezer. And if you're going to put cases of tomatoes in your freezer, give them a good week to freeze. Or spread them out on trays to flash freeze. Because it takes days and days for a compact case of tomatoes to freeze in your freezer, okay? I'm just letting you know. But I'll know I've been putting my tomatoes in the freezer as well. So I've peeled and I've put water over them and I've peeled them, and they're in stock pots inside of canners, double boiling to cook down. But yesterday when Howard went shopping, now you remember I paid $12 for that case of tomatoes. Yesterday Howard stopped for groceries on his way home because yesterday was payday. And they had, the store I sent him to, they had the big seeded watermelons. I said, get 2. I don't care how much they cost. Now, folks, don't be fooled by the size of the bag, because that is a Costco bag. These are good old-fashioned seeded watermelons. And by God, I don't know how we're going to eat them fast enough. But I've been wanting seeded watermelon for quite some time. Where are these from? Product of USA. Lovely. Because I haven't had those in years. But the store he was going to had cases of Roma tomatoes on for $8.99. And that's more of a realistic price. So I got him to get me another case. And instead of putting them in the freezer and waiting a week for them to freeze, I decided to try somewhat of the way that Heather the Needy Homesteader showed us. I cut the ends off and I sliced them in half, and I've put them cut side down on big cookie sheets on parchment in my oven. Now I only have 1 rack in my oven, folks. So I got Howie to bring me in 2 bricks from the yard, and I just put them on their sides in the oven between the curls of the element on the bottom, and they're holding up another tray of tomatoes. So I've got 2 trays of tomatoes. I'm going to get 4 trays roasted, but I have equal amounts. So what I've got bubbling down is from the freezer, and what's going in the oven is what I've got picked and ripened this week, and my half a bushel from the store. I'm doing a video on which method do I like better. And I have a feeling it's going to be the roasting of the tomatoes, because, you know, lugging them out of the freezer, covering them in boiling water, and then peeling them, and things get messy, right? Roasting seems to be better. So we'll see. Now let's talk about prices. When Howie was in the store, I had sent him a list. Where's my list? I had sent him a list, right? I said I want a big bag of onions. I wanted a watermelon, a full case of tomatoes, a big bag of onions, a 10-pound bag of onions, leeks, because they were on sale, and 2 nice little steaks. So he phoned me from the store and said, oh, and a bag of potatoes and some potatoes. Because I heard in Ohio and other places that tomatoes are running, people are running short on tomatoes. Like they're not, and if they can find them, they're really, really expensive. And I hadn't heard anything about this. So when he got there, he phoned me and he said, I can't find any potatoes. And the only potatoes he could find were in boxes with little 2-quart baskets of potatoes in. And those 2-quart baskets of new potatoes were like $4.99 a basket. And I went, no. And then he found a pallet of 10-pound bags of onions, and they were $10.99, folks. The last time we bought 10 pounds of onions, they were $2.98. And that wasn't even on sale. But the pallet next to it had potatoes, and there was only like 5 bags. Like, I got him to put me on camera so we could FaceTime while we were doing this. And there was no prices on them. None. He said, I have no idea. And I said, well, get one. And if you get up to the counter and they're like $7.99, you're going to have to be firm, because all of us are going to have to learn to be firm and stick up for ourselves. And if you get up there and that's $7.99 or more, you tell them, please take those potatoes back. I'm not paying that price. If the store clerks start telling the manager that, then it's going to go up the line that people are not buying what they're selling because of the prices, right? It can't all be about shipping issues. It can't be, right? So he got 1 bag of potatoes, and I said, okay, let's go look for a couple of steaks. I just had to rotate my tomato trays. Sorry about that. So Howie walked over to the meat counter, and there was nothing really, right? So he's looking, and there's like inside round steak and, you know, nothing really exciting. And I said, what's that up on the top shelf? And he said, oh, they're Angus steaks. And I said, grab them all. And he goes, what, Bev? They're 2 little wee things for $7.50. I said, look at the yellow sticker on them, Howard. Does that not say $3 off? And he said, yeah. And he said, would they be any good? I said, they can't sell them if they're not good. So I said, grab them all. And even at $7.49, that was a treat for us. But if they're really $3 off. So he gets up to the counter. Here's what I'm talking about. $6.98, $7.45, $7.28. This was $2.28. This was $2.45, and this was $3.98. So these steaks can safely go in the freezer. Well, 2 are going to be for supper, but these steaks can safely go in the freezer, and that's definitely making that quarter squeak. So what I'm going to tell you is I learned this from a senior friend years ago, before I came close to seniorhood myself. She said, living on a senior's income, my husband and I do things a little bit differently. She said, now listen carefully, folks. They would go, and I've tried it. I don't do it very often anymore, but it really works. She said, we go out first thing every Friday morning, we're going to be at, we have one or two or three stores that we go bang, bang, bang. We go to the first store as soon as the doors are open. We go straight for the meat counter and we pick up all the marked down meat because they mark down all the meat Thursday night to put out for Friday morning. Or they anything left in the coolers or whatever, they just go and put markdown stickers on them. So she said, we get all that meat and then we go to the next store and the next store. And she said, and then we have our meat for the month. And she said, it's still good as long as it's going in the freezer. Also, when he got up to the counter, the potatoes were only $5.99 for a 10-pound bag. If the price had been on the pallet or on the bags, I would have told him to get all 4. I have, I don't know, about 2 or 3 pounds of wrinkled potatoes that I'm going to cut up and dehydrate. And then I'm going to take that 10-pound bag of potatoes and I'm going to save a couple of potatoes for our boiled supper. And the rest are getting cut up and canned. Cut up, blanched, and canned. So when you find, if I had been with Howie, I would have stood at the counter and said, go back and get those other 4 bags of potatoes. But I was only with him on the phone. Now, here's a couple more tips. When Angie and I started making my green juice, which I'm going to switch out tea for green juice shortly. When Angie and I started making my green juice, the chard, the parsley, the cilantro, all of these things had great big long twist ties on them, right? And Angie said, what do you want me to do with these? I said, put them in the second drawer in the kitchen. She said, why? I said, Angie, those are really heavy duty twist ties. And she said, yeah. Or one of those will make 3 regular twist ties. And she said, yeah. I said, when was the last time you saw twist ties in a box of garbage bags? We don't get twist ties anymore in the garbage bags because they all have those funny ends where you can tie the bag shut. And most freezer bags that people buy now are Ziploc. You don't get too many freezer bags with the twist ties in them. It's one of the reasons why I don't normally buy Ziploc bags. I usually go to the dollar store and get the ones in the purple box because they have twist ties in them, right? And please, when you buy broccoli, bunches of broccoli or anything that has like asparagus, that has those purple those purple or thick blue rubber bands, please save those. Now, at some point here, they're trying to make the bread tags that close the bread bag out of cardboard, and I think people are complaining. But save those little plastic snaps when you get them because they're trying to outlaw them, right? And those are really handy. Those are really handy. So, here's what was going on in the garden. Yes, this completely collapsed. Now, here's what I was talking about. Oh, that one, oh, that broke right off. But look at the difference. Pretty sure these got crossed with zucchini. This one must be getting ready to go ripe or it wouldn't have broke off, I hope. Yep, there's going to be a lot more green tomato pickles. Celery's just about ready. I got a few peppers. And that squash, pretty sure it's half zucchini, half spaghetti squash. Isn't that something? But I showed Howie and he goes, well, he said it may not be a spaghetti squash and it may not be a zucchini. He said, but I'm sure it's edible. I said, there is that. So I'm not going to trust the spaghetti squash that look like they've gotten bred with zucchini. I think I have a couple of them. They were the late ones. And I guess that's when my zucchini, the side of the house, started to bloom. And the bees don't know one squash flower from another. So next year I'm going to plant my zucchini out front again, but in 2 boxes. And all of my spaghetti squash are going to go outside. And obviously, next year I'm going to stop at the lumber yard and get 4 to 6 8-foot 1x1s and build a stronger trellis for my spaghetti squash. But yeah, I'm going to grow them that way again. just don't use canes. Whatever canes I can salvage, and I am going to try and salvage them, whatever canes I'm going to salvage from the spaghetti squash collapsed trellis, I'm actually going to use in my bean beds next year. Because doing the TP of bean canes, first strong wind, my climbing beans went nuts, and the first strong wind knocked them right over. So I'm going to do a trellis like I did with the spaghetti squash, but on my bean beds. That makes sense? Here's an idea. Wherever you live in North America, right? Because Joe Mama told me there was a potato shortage across North America, and I'd heard nothing about it. So here's what we're going to do. You email me at connectedheartsfamily@gmail.com. Just put your first name or your YouTube name at the bottom. But tell me where you live, what state or province you live in North America, and what the gas and food prices are like where you live. Give a couple of examples, for instance, like if you can't find any potatoes, or if meat's, a gazillion dollars a pound, or whatever the case may be. Email me that information, and then I will do another tea break, and I will share all of this information with the general public. That way, we're all being kept in the loop. What if you live in the tri-state area of Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky, but you live right there, and one state over, prices are better. We can share that with people, right? So don't be afraid to email me and put in the subject line gas, groceries, and shortages. All right? And like we did with the frugal living tips, I'll come back and I will share all of that information. All right? This is the Mrs. Wolfe from Our Half Acre Homestead saying frugal living isn't just about what you save. It's also about where you shop. So let's keep that information flowing. Take care. God bless.